Hello, movie lovers. Welcome home. My name is Amy Henserling, and you are listening to Watch This List, a podcast aimed at getting your film world down to a more manageable size. Today, we have the exciting topic of non-DC, non-Marvel superhero films, and I am joined by comedian 999 himself, the great Rob from Letterboxd. I'm so stoked that he is here. Rob, say hello to the people.
You got to set your standards higher. I mean, don't get me wrong. My mom thinks I'm awesome, but it's a narrowly held opinion. But thank you for having me. This is one of my favorite subjects, so I'm psyched to be able to talk about it.
Your mom and I are the presidents of your fan club, so you may send all of your mail, not hate, only love mail to she and I. Who happen to live in the same state, actually. So this will be an easy thing. I can coordinate, okay?
I appreciate that because, Christ, the volume of mail that I never see, it's crippling.
Yes,
so.
and we know that you're out there. Rob is, in case anybody, because I have actually been like, hey, do you know who Rob is? And people are like, oh, the Watchmen guy. So it is important to say this is the person who has the Watchmen avatar, because that is, I don't know if you're aware of this, Rob, but that is how you're referred to by people that are stalking you. And,
It beats most of the names that are hurled at me from across the street, so I'll take that.
The Watchmen guy, which is also fitting considering this topic. So, Rob, welcome. I'm stoked. I really, truly am. And I did not think that Rob would agree to guest star. So that's even more exciting. And love your reviews. They're very long. I read all of them, which is significant. Even your TLDRs.
I sometimes feel like I got diarrhea of the keyboard when I start writing about these things, but I do it to basically entertain myself and my significant other. If anybody else reads it, I am psyched beyond human belief. I literally joined Letterboxd as a way to remember what the hell I watched, because I got tired of getting drunk and flipping on Netflix and being 10 minutes in. It's like, I saw this piece of shit, and then you have to start over with something. And then it's like, well, this is an excuse to actually stop and think beyond, oh, that was awesome, or, oh, that was terrible. Why did I like it? And all right, if I'm going to go through that exercise, I might as well have some fun with it and, try to entertain myself while I'm writing. So it's a way to think. I'm no film student. I'm just some guy. But it was, all right, well, here's an excuse to try to think a little bit more about why I like something or why I don't. So that's part of why I like Letterboxd. But again, I do it for myself. I'm just psyched when other people come across it.
Enjoy
like,
it.
Why are you reading this drivel? A drunk wrote it.
I think it's great. And this also is a fitting topic, I think, because you are I'm trying to find the right adjective here.
Rabid geek. That's fine.
Avid comic book fan.
Whatever you call me is no better or worse than anything that was yelled at the back of my head while someone gave me a swirly in the junior high locker room toilet. So yes, I'm a giant comic geek. I've been reading comics since I was 5 years old. I've got far too many of them. I've got a storage locker full of long boxes. I got a basement full of more. I got to get to storage. I look up above my monitor. I've got an original Matt Wagner Grendel and Kevin Matchstick from Mage the Hero Discovered. I got an original Kevin Maguire Daredevil. So the whole house is comic books and comic art. And thank God my significant other is also into comics. She's got her own pull lists. All the comic art over on that wall is hers. So it's just a big part of our lives. It's been a part of my life for, God, more than 46 years. What have I done with my life?
Rob, this, you think that this is a podcast. This is really an intervention. I've actually been hired to meet with you. I have a couch.
I need the help. I knew my mom would find somebody eventually. I knew it was only a matter of time.
I went over that your mom and I are part of your are presidents of your fan club. So this is all coming together. I hope this is getting crystal clear to you. What's really going on?
I understand. It's time to straighten up and fly right. Get a real job or something.
Well, I was gonna say the couple that reads comics together stays together, but we could go this route too. So Rob is a huge comic book fan. I'm not gonna call you a nerd, and you go to Comic Con, which you've written about on in your reviews too, right?
Yep, been going to Comic Con as often as you can get tickets. It gets harder every year, but since
Mm-hmm.
2006, I think we've only missed a couple since then. We've gotten pretty lucky with tickets. And if you're any kind of a genre geek at all, find a way to find me, hit me over the head, take my tickets. I'm old and slow and can't defend myself. You can get them, but but yeah, there's nothing like it if you're into comic books or science fiction or anything like that. It's a great experience.
The other thing I was gonna say too, which you have to bring this up. We'll go ahead and segue this. So, uh, Rob's number 5 film on his list is The Rocketeer, directed by Joe Johnston,
Yes.
1991. And that one, I believe you had like a very special gift from your significant other, didn't you?
Oh,
Because you wrote about it in your review.
yeah. She for my birthday a couple of years ago, there was a limited edition released in Japan, original GI Joe sized action figure. So it's the foot tall, not the little ones that with the helmet and a stand that you can put it on so that you can get him up, his feet up off the ground to give the
Wow.
flight effect. So so yeah, she's well aware of. I've loved the Rocketeer since the comic books, and there weren't that many comic books, but they've since collected them in a great edition. Which, if you're a fan of the movie at all, I highly recommend.
I
It's a great character. It's just a lot of fun.
Yeah, Cliff Secord. And I actually have I cleaned out my closet a couple of weeks ago and I found Rocketeer playing cards. So that's my claim to fame.
Oh,
I,
nice.
I have a little packet and it's unopened for some reason. I guess I felt like it was too sacred to unwrap, and it's like opening a time capsule that I buried in the backyard.
Yeah, that was back in the age of the trading card. I had a few of them at the time. At my local comic store, he's got a few packs, and it's another
Mhm.
one. I'd buy it, but I wouldn't want to tear it open. It's like I'd feel
Exactly.
bad doing it. So
It feels like it should be preserved, like it's a part of history. I'm probably going to ask you this for each one of these, but for the Rocketeer specifically, this is that you loved the comics first, right? And then
yes,
you ended up loving the movie subsequently. But is it because of its faithfulness to the material, or tell me like the difference between those two things?
it's interesting because it's only faithful to the original material up to a point. Yeah, the large strokes of Cliff Secord and PV, and they find a rocket from the government and go on adventures with it. Those are directly from the comic. The comic is actually, in its own way, much more adult than the movie is because Jennifer Connelly is actually Betty in the comic book, and it's very much drawn and meant to
Oh.
be Betty Page. And the whole movie subplot of oh, she's being romanced by Neville Sinclair, and the comic is no, she's having naked pinup pictures taken by some scummy photographer, and he's worried about the
Oh.
photographer taking her away. It's I mean, it's not a porno comic or anything, but it's much more adult in the themes. Disney definitely got a hold of it and said, all right, we got to make this a little more for the kids. But the other than that, the tone of an old style aviation serial story, that was in the comic, and it very much crosses over to the movie. So it's not a faithful adaptation in story, but in tone, it's dead on. So I mean, that's why I fell in love with it, because it's like, okay, you got the broad strokes, and that's what matters, and that's what that would be so easy to screw up, by making it too for kids, and you got the important stuff right.
Would you I don't know that would you characterize, I suppose it would be, but not in a traditional sense, would you characterize this as an origin story?
Oh, it definitely is.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not your traditional origin story of superpowers or anything, but it's a completely legitimate origin story to be. I came across this technology and found a way to use it to make the world better or whatever the motivation for the hero is. So, and that's very faithful to the original comic also. It's some gangster stole it and hid it in the hangar, and he found it and started to use it. Now, it's more of an origin story in the comic because even though there aren't a ton of comics, Dave Stevens, the guy who wrote and drew the original comic, really only did a couple of story arcs of it because his art was so detailed and intricate and took him so long. It would be years in between issues.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah, I think there was a grand total of 6 or 8 issues of the entire series that he did. And he died, I want to say 10 or 12 years ago. So other artists have picked it up. Those original ones, yeah, I mean, the volume's very small. But yeah, it was that sort of original arc where he got it and defeated the gangsters was followed by an arc where he went to New York and met the Shadow. But that's the entirety of the Rocketeer. But yes, this story is basically an origin, and I imagine if somehow the mouse had been able to get this up above Terminator 2 that year and we'd had sequels, it would have moved along like any other comic type serial story.
Alas.
That was a tough summer to be anything but Arnold.
Yeah. You could have really picked quite a great deal, an array of ones, but I want to know what it is that you really love about this one the most.
It's 1930s Art Deco visuals are really kind of effortless. Everything just feels like it fits. So if you can kind of get in the groove of the movie, there's nothing there that's like, no, you tried to build something that looks too fake or that doesn't look like it would fit in. You're trying to, it's very much an effortless, no, you're back in 1938 Hollywood. This is probably what it looked like, even if you've never seen any of it. And doing smart stuff like, all right, well, if we have access to the Griffith Observatory, that already looks like that. So that fits in with the whole Art Deco general look of the thing. Visually, as a period piece, it's just a lot of fun to watch if you like any of those older movies.
If something is a good adaptation in your mind, as far as the comic book is concerned, are you looking more towards like that it captures the spirit of it, or are you thinking of it as like a more literal thing, like it's in alignment with the particulars of the narrative? Like, do you just want it to be this similar in spirit, or are you like, no, I want it to be accurate?
I would, given the choice between the two, I'd rather have the spirit.
Okay.
The only dead on accurate of, oh my God, that's the comic book, is Robert Rodriguez's Sin City. And I considered that for my list, but that's part of the reason I didn't put it in. It's because, yep, that is, I mean, literally, he and Frank Miller would take pages from the book and design shots to make them look like that. They took the attitude of the comic book is the storyboard. And that's fine. And it's a great adaptation of it, except there's really nothing in the movie that isn't already in the comic book. And that first Sin City was lightning in a bottle of, okay, we got certain good actors excited about doing certain roles, so it really kind of worked out reasonably well. Sin City, A Dame to Kill For, I can't watch it. It looks exactly like the books, but it falls flat for me. And I have not seen it in a few years, so don't ask me why. But anyway, to go back to Too Long Didn't Read, the spirit's more important than the exact adaptation. An exact adaptation, I don't need it. I got the book.
Okay. So spirit versus letter of the law, we shall say.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And even though you could make the argument with this that it's not really a superhero movie, it's really more of a pulp thing. Part of why I have a soft spot for the comic and for the movie is, when I was growing up, you got comic books off of spinner racks at like the drugstore or the supermarket. They went through like newsstand distribution. And in the early 80s, comics moved to comic stores, the direct market. And there were economic reasons for doing it. But when that happened, it opened things up for publishers other than the big ones like Marvel and DC, like little publishers. So this came from, I think, Pacific Comics, but there was also Comico and First Comics, little shops to be like, all right, well, we can try to put books out too, because it's a captive market. If you can only go to a comic store, comic fans are going to be there. So this is one of the earlier comics I saw where it's like, this is not big Marvel DC. It's not even really a superhero. And yeah, it came out in like 82, 83. So I'm only a couple years off Raiders of the Lost Ark the first time I'm seeing this. So it was one of the first books for me that wasn't Spider-Man or Batman. It was, comics don't have to be superheroes. They can be anything.
If you even knew that this was based on comic books, I think Rocketeer is just like a solid, at least like family film, like kids movie ish. It can go in that genre.
Oh, absolutely. And you don't even have to think of it as a comic film. It wouldn't shock me if a lot of the people who did wind up seeing it never had any idea that there was a Dave Stevens Pacific Comics, except for the opening credit of based on a graphic novel. Again, part of me thinks this should have been a $1 billion movie. It was, a period piece with adventure like the old serials. It's not that different from Raiders of the Lost Ark, except one's got Harrison Ford and George Lucas and Steven Spielberg and that much more money behind it.
But this was still Disney. And I will say, I would just be so sad if I forgot. James Horner's score for me is just glorious.
Oh, just that opening shot
I
of
know.
the title and the score rises and hangar doors open. It's magnificent.
It is magnificent, and I love it. So yeah, and Rocketeer is available on Disney Plus. So that is actually streaming. That will be streaming in the foreseeable future too. So get on it, people. Please see the Rocketeer.
It's not like Warner Brothers and HBO Plus. Things aren't disappearing off Disney Plus or HBO Max rather.
It's going to be there. Okay, so now I'm excited about the next one. The next one, which is debatable as to whether or not this belongs on Rob's list, but
even my significant other doesn't agree with me. But I'll stand by it.
But he is going to defend this like it's his thesis. So this is The Fly. In 1986.
David Cronenberg's The Fly.
Our friend David Cronenberg directed. I tried in preparation for this to find an article that I could quote that literally says The Fly is a superhero origin story. I managed to find one, but it wasn't. I wanted it kind of from the director's lips.
I've never heard him say it, and he might deny it. This might be what I'm bringing to it, but
no, he has not. He's not on record as saying it, but I will tell you, Rob, that he does consider this a love story. For like first and foremost, he would define this. He said he wasn't thinking about AIDS at the time. That's false. He wasn't thinking necessarily even about horror, although obviously that's a huge element. He said at the heart of this thing, I wanted to make a love story. And then he was like, when you do a genre movie, you are given so much more freedom to be disgusting. So even though at the heart of it, he really just wanted to tell this like very sweet thing that kind of goes wrong. He's like, well, I get the best of both worlds because I made it horror.
Yeah, and when I say it's a superhero story, it's not just a superhero story. It doesn't mean I don't think that it's also a body horror story. And a story of a doomed love story where you fall in love with somebody who, for whatever reason, drugs, booze, greed, what is destroying themselves and you can't save them. This is absolutely a doomed love story and a really good one. But for superheroes, this is an origin story for anybody who ever made fun of me in junior high school and said, hey, how come Spider-Man doesn't shoot webs out of his ass? Because I really believe on some level, Cronenberg had to be thinking of something like Spider-Man and thinking, if you get bitten by a radioactive spider, you don't get spider powers, you get thyroid cancer. If you go up in a rocket and get hit with hard radiation, you don't come back able to stretch. All your hair falls out and you die. The way I look at this is very much, and the trappings of a superhero story are there. And I keep coming back to Spider-Man. Spider-Man starts out, he goes to a science fair. This opens at a science fair. Spider-Man, he's awkward around, Peter Parker's awkward around girls. He's awkward around everybody. He doesn't know how to talk to him. Seth Brundle is awkward. The only way he can talk to Ronnie is based on his work. He has the accident and gets powers, and initially they're amazing for him, and they are Spider-Man powers. He can climb walls. He doesn't shoot webs, but again, back to the how come he doesn't shoot them out of his butt? All right, a fly would be able to shoot acid, but he wouldn't be able to do it with his hands. It starts out very much altruistic. What I've discovered will save the world. And that's when it begins to twist. He's still in a world-saving mode as he becomes more manic. But then it becomes, I'm going to save the world by giving everyone this experience. And he's trying to get somebody to go through the teleporter, not understanding what happened to him. And by the time he realizes everything has really gone wrong and there's a problem, that's when everything falls apart. And certainly he doesn't go out and stop crime, but I think the big beats are there of a superhero story where Dave says, well, that's not how it would happen. You would not live happily ever after saving the world. Even if you got powers like this, number one, power corrupts. And number two, playing around with anything that would change you on that kind of level would not change you in a way that you would want to be changed, even if it did in a medium term.
He's changing, but that's another thing Cronenberg was saying. He was like, it wasn't that it wasn't about disease necessarily. It's just that he was coming at it from, he said he wanted to make something about aging and death. And Cronenberg said all of his movies are about aging and death. So it's just like wrestling with mortality in the context. And this, I mean, The Fly was also a remake. Let's not forget Vincent Price. So this wasn't necessarily, wholly original material that he was going off of. But still, it had all these dormant elements that he could kind of use in his Cronenbergian way.
And he found the elements in that original, or teased out elements just in the concept, that really worked well for him.
Exactly.
It just so happens a lot of the beats follow Spider-Man and a superhero story, except with that body horror concept. Yeah, what would really happen to you is, even if in the short term you could climb walls, you're probably dying at a cellular level.
Well, and also, does this, I'm going to sound terribly ignorant here, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Trust me, you get used to sounding ignorant. It's fine.
Okay. Well, if I bring up Venom as in connection with Spider-Man, is there any correlation whatsoever? Is that just not at all applicable to what Seth starts out as, and then what he?
Oh God, that's the stupidest fucking thing. No, actually, that's a very good point.
You're right.
No, it's that never occurred to me, but it's not a bad analogy, because Venom's origin, particularly in the comic books, was, it was a story which we will be seeing in Marvel Phase 6 or 7, Secret Wars, where all the heroes are brought to this world, and Peter Parker finds a symbiotic organism that acts. Initially, it bonds with me, and it becomes my new costume. I don't have to change clothes anymore. It also, it generates webbing for me, so I don't need to go out and make web shooters anymore, or shoot them out of my butt, if I'm listening to Rob's analogy. But yeah, over time, the nature of the symbiosis, he starts to need it more, and the personality of the symbiotic organism takes over more and more, to the point where they really have to be separated. So Venom is that costume finds somebody who hates Spider-Man and hates Peter Parker because of
Eddie Brock.
Yeah. And becomes something very much closer to what the symbiote would have been originally. So again, back to the too long didn't read. Yes, something alien becomes part of Peter Parker and starts to change him, except...
Just like The Fly.
Right, except Cronenberg didn't have a contract to have to write Fly stories for the next 50 years, so he could give a definitive ending. With Marvel, it's like, fine, we'll separate them, and all right, here's something else we can do with it, and we got Venom.
Right. Because this is technically because the fly part of him that kind of is like you said, where power corrupts. The part that becomes like kind of maniacal and going off the deep end, not necessarily good guy territory, hero territory anymore. You could actually sort of view that as separate than who Seth actually is at his essence without that. Or conversely, I think you wrote about this too, where maybe that was there anyway. And this just brought out a darkness that already existed within him. That's also could be read that way.
That's really a great. Are you sure you don't read comic books? Because it's
That's
really a good observation. Because it's really not too far off from even what Cronenberg puts in the movie, where he's got that one scene toward the beginning of the third act where he's telling Ronnie, Gina Davis, the insect is awake and I might hurt you. Now,
exactly.
the question there is it really the insect? Is it just, okay, I'm now in the self-pity phase of, oh, I had all this power and I was starting to really feel like me. I mean, and now, oh no, I'm just angry and I'm going to lash out at somebody. It's an open question, and it's valid for the Fly, and it's valid for Peter Parker and the Venom symbiote, and Eddie Brock and the same. So,
but it's definitely got more stuff than just the typical Cronenberg body horror accent to it. And that one I got off Amazon. I don't think that's streaming anywhere, but check it also if you're a fan of Goldblum, because he is young in this, and it's kind of a fun thing to see him in non-Jurassic Park mode.
yeah, I mean, God, if you look at him as Grandmaster in Thor Ragnarok and go back to this, I'm like, oh my God, he must have gotten so many chicks.
So, yeah. Number 3 on Rob's top 5 superhero movies that are not Marvel or DC is a little movie called Super, directed by James Gunn from 2011.
It really is little.
Mm.
I think it made $500,000. I don't think even people who love Guardians of the Galaxy, I don't know anybody who's seen Super. I kind of forced you to watch it.
That really warms my heart. There is justice in the world. That this, but out of respect for Rob's choice, I'm not gonna slam Super here. I am a innocent third party who.
You can slam it. I won't get it. I didn't make the fucking thing. I mean, it's James Gunn's credit or fault on it. I like it for certain reasons, but I also get it's not for everybody. As a comedy, it's jet black.
Yes, Rob, please. Okay, it's now that you've said that, please tell me why you like this. I know. Generally speaking, because your last review did help contextualize this for me, but also give a little bit of a brief history, just in case nobody knows what the heck this movie is. Super.
Okay, so yeah, in a time immemorial before Marvel Phase 2, when nobody knew who James Gunn was, he made his trauma flick, which I've never seen that one either, but he made a monster movie that nobody saw, that I, however, saw. It's one of those Slither. I have no idea how I even heard about it. I have no memory of how I heard about it. My significant other gave me a DVD for my birthday, so clearly I had heard about it and told her I was interested. I know you're not a fan of that one either, but I really got a kick out of that one. As sort of a modern, gored up, but old school monster movie, I liked it. Then he did Super in 2011. I'm not even sure it came out in more than 10 theaters, but it was a black comedy about a dude who, on a good day, is somewhere on the mental illness spectrum between depressed and brain tumor, like the Texas Tower Sniper. His wife leaves him, and he decides God tells him to become a costumed superhero.
And this is Dwight from The Office. This is Rainn Wilson.
Yes,
yeah. Who's playing?
Rainn Wilson. And Rain did not go through the skinless chicken breast and broccoli Marvel workout routine.
No.
He went straight from the set of The Office and put on a red leotard to be the Crimson Bolt. But because of that, also his character Frank did not travel the world to find Bruce Wayne's ninja school. He has not learned any esoteric weapons. He goes out into the world with a pipe wrench to fight crime wherever he finds it. And that is the extent of his plan. And somewhere in there is, I'm going to also get my ex-wife back. He has decided that she has been kidnapped by a local strip club owner and is being held and forced to do drugs against her will. And this man bumbles out in the world, stopping crime. I'm putting air quotes up. With
Shut
a pipe wrench.
Crime. Saying things like,
and,
shut up, crime.
Yeah, and he covers all the bases. He gets himself a young sidekick, and depending on where your sense of humor lies, hilarity ensues.
And you've got all the staples of James Gunn as we know him to be now, which I think I would say everybody knows who that is. It's got the aesthetic of the kind of, you know, how he does soundtracks where they're very, I think they're intrusive.
On the nose, needle drops.
Yeah, there's a lot of like rock songs and stuff where he's not subtle. So you don't kind of ease into anything, especially the music. It's just like, boom, you know.
No, and it's a very different effect in Super than it is in Guardians of the Galaxy or the Suicide Squad, because in Guardians of the Galaxy and Suicide Squad, you're actually supposed to like the characters. Therefore, a good needle drop will give you an emotional feeling toward a character that you like, and that will raise you up. There's nothing particularly likable about anybody in Super. You know, at best, Frank is a sad sack loser. At best, his sidekick Bolty is sociopathically insane. So the needle drops have a very different effect. And I'll agree, particularly in Super, they can be far more intrusive than. So if you already think from Guardians of the Galaxy, that's a bit much, they'll smack you right in the neck in Super. I'll grant that.
Right. So Super is in following, if we're going to go with my initial suspicion trajectory for Rob's kind of through line here, we have again a realistic setup. This is perhaps, besides your first one, the most realistic setup.
So it's the story kind of progresses with he literally believes he was touched by the finger of God who told him to become a crime fighter. And I do believe he went out a few times and bashed a few people in the head, and he started getting news coverage of there's a psychopath running around bashing people in the head with a pipe wrench. It's in a local suburb where I live in Boston last year. There was a guy running around bashing people in the head with a hammer. I doubt he was a fucking superhero.
No, nor would he be
covered that way or seen that way. Even if it was all drug dealers he bashed in the head.
Sorry.
But there is a point in the story where he feels that the cops have an eye on him and he throws his costume away. And I think that's the point where any semblance of reality from what we see stops, because that's also the point where he finds Bolty, who really wants to help him out, and
inexplicably
he starts getting and he starts getting positive news coverage, and he's somehow, with no training whatsoever, able to defeat a couple of mob assassins. Granted, it's dicey, but then by the end he's taking on a house full of mob goons, all heavily armed, is able to rescue his wife, who then leaves, and then by the end he's alone again, surrounded by drawings, which I think he all did himself, of, oh no, she went off and had kids and they love me, and those kids, they're part of my life. And so I think there's a huge part of this story that doesn't actually happen, and that kind of makes it even more intriguing to me, that the parts that are actually kind of heroic are the most bullshit of all of this.
And that it really is, like you said, and like the Joker, where it's like you're trying to it be explained by mental illness or, some sort of break, psychological break that would cause a person to go down this route successfully or not. Like, why would they? Yeah.
Yeah, and I like Todd Phillips' Joker. I think it really wants to be Taxi Driver and the King of Comedy when it grows up, but I'm not the first person to say that.
Yeah.
But by nature of it's the Joker, it has that mythology into it. You have to kind of believe this is the Batman villain.
Mm-hmm.
And Super doesn't have that baggage. It's just some dude. So yeah, you can explore whether it's depression or a brain tumor or he's somewhere on the spectrum or some other undiagnosed thing. There's something wrong with him and he made him do these things. It doesn't matter because who cares about the Crimson Bolt?
So for Super, why are you telling people to watch this? Like, this is obviously on your list and we're telling people to watch this. What about this makes you want to say, check this out?
It's because it is a deconstruction of costumed Avenger Batman type comic books. Yeah, and similar in the vein of The Fly, where it's a self-contained thing that doesn't affect any other story. It is interesting to examine, Batman as an archetype. So to examine that archetype of how would that really work if somebody were to do that, I think is valuable to anybody who's a fan of the genre. And it doesn't detract from Batman. Batman is still an awesome, fun read and an awesome, fun watch. But if you like that kind of story, having a story that examines it with a critical eye can be really stimulating and intriguing. So even whether the comedy in this works for you or not, and a certain amount of it does for me, it's jet black, but it works on the level of, yeah, I love Batman. This is probably what Batman would be doing, running around hitting somebody with a wrench. That's the best he can come up with. Shut up crime, and I'll bash you in the head with a wrench. It's all right. That's kind of funny. The juxtaposition is
okay. So Super, James Gunn, check it out for Rob. Let us know what you think. Actually, don't let me know let Rob know what you think.
If you're the right kind of person, there's some real laughs in this story about a broken person breaking heads open.
Go to comedian 999. Leave a comment. This is Amazon, and okay. So number two, we're getting into the top two here. These are great. I have to say, I support Rob's choices here. RoboCop, 1987, the great Paul Verhoeven.
Oh yeah, just full blast. It's I guarantee 2/3 of the budget was just blood squibs because people get exploded, extreme violence, killer satire. The best Verhovens are killer satire, and that's part of the DNA of RoboCop. At least reportedly, RoboCop started as a Judge Dredd adaptation, and Judge Dredd, not so much in either of the movie versions, although in particular the Garland one has a lot to inform it. The Stallone one, not so much. But Judge Dredd was created in the 70s in 2000 AD Magazine, which is a British anthology comic that comes out weekly as a satire of American cop stories set in the future.
Oh.
And was very much I am the law. I'm judge, jury, and executioner. You've jaywalked 30 years. Jaywalked against the light, death. It's very much a satire of that kind of gung-ho American cop story. And again, it might be apocryphal, but my understanding is this started as that, and then somebody couldn't get the rights. So they said, all right, well, we'll just make it this similar thing that's original.
So RoboCop is not based on an actual series like your other ones are.
Correct.
Okay.
This is a completely original IP. And for the most part, I like to treat it as the only one. I have a little bit of a soft spot for RoboCop 2. Never seen RoboCop 3. I never saw the TV series. Never saw the remake.
They don't exist, Rob.
Yeah, I've read exactly one comic book, RoboCop versus Terminator, for the pure Frank Miller wrote it.
Wow.
Walt Simonson drew it. And okay, it's a one-off, and I consider it apocryphal. It's fun. It's its own thing. RoboCop in Verhoeven's hands is unique enough. I like to leave it alone
It's just,
in my head canon.
yes, it's isolated. It just happened once. Some movies you kind of have to just say, a sequel, what? Who? No, I've never heard of it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think this is one of those. So this one, even if you're not necessarily a fan already of comic books or superheroes, it does, while it falls in line with that, it is just a very enjoyable action flick too. But I do want to know what you think about his kind of his journey in this, since we are talking origins. I mean, this whole list is basically origin stories. You know, what do you think about his arc and how he becomes RoboCop?
Part of his journey is that the big joke is always, oh, Bruce Wayne's the mask, Batman's the real one. He doesn't even have a mask. He's trying to get back who he was. He was, to become this against his will, he had to give up a secret identity, any identity at all.
It's a big part of it, and it comes back to what I like about the movies that you picked. I like the existential aspect of it, because that at least is trying to get you to think about something that you might think about on your own, just about life, versus these very, very specific scenarios where, like, you would never naturally think about them unless someone posited to you the specific scenario itself. So this is like, what if you were in a reality where people were changing you or pushing you into a scenario where you couldn't even remember who you were anymore, who you are, not literally like in this case. So his whole trajectory emotionally is very compelling.
Yeah, and there's a certain amount to even get away from the superhero stuff. The old, what is it, the ship of Cepheus or something? If enough of you is taken,
or
no, if you replace enough parts, is it still the same ship? If there is enough of you taken away, are you still you?
Right.
And in this case, it's not just physically, but they took his family. They took the first thing they do in taking his identity is, oh no, you're from South Detroit? No, now you're a cop here. And he doesn't even make it 24 hours. So much is stripped from him. Can he even still be the same person? If you want to, it's a great thing about this. Starship Troopers, I mean, hell, Basic Instinct, any of the big American movies that he did. You can take RoboCop as just, this is a great action movie, and it's a great action movie. But you can also get into, all right, yeah, it's all that stuff that was privatized. That was satire then. That's real now. It's the biggest TV show is this leering, I'd buy that for $1. Warner Brothers is now owned by the creator of Naked and Afraid. Verhoeven was onto some shit while he was making this movie.
He's ahead of his time.
Yeah, and God, I wish he wasn't, but
it's kind of like Cronenberg. I mean, they're both still kicking. I mean, and not just alive, but they're both. This is 86 and 87 for The Fly and RoboCop, and Verhoeven is still. He just made Benedetta, and then Cronenberg just made Crimes of the Future.
Both of which are on my list. I haven't seen either one of those yet.
I haven't either. For various
I saw the original Crimes of the Future. He was young. He got better.
Yeah.
But you can get the same thing from Cronenberg movies. I love watching Videodrome to this day. You watch Videodrome in the age of the internet?
Mm-hmm.
All right. He was looking at cable TV, but it's 1-to-1.
Yeah, that one.
And you can get a lot of
that is a good one for, like, did this guy have like a deal with Satan, and then Satan said, here's what's going to happen in 30 years, because that feels very predictive of what was going to happen.
I don't want to get off track. I'll talk Videodrome with you sometime.
Oh man, that's it. Yeah. Okay, so RoboCop in why do you love it? Why do you endorse this one so highly? As far as, like, you feel like it's important enough for just the average person to see who maybe has never heard of it, honestly?
I mean, number one, arguably, even it's not even arguably, even over Batman, it's the best superhero movie, like really pure superhero movie of the 80s. It's not a superhero you ever heard of, and it's wrapped up in a lot of science fiction, but so are a lot of superheroes. A man is given powers. He's got an arch nemesis, or two or three in this case, whether you want to pick Dick Jones or Boddicker or the Old Man. And he battles crime. In this case, he doesn't want to, he's forced to, but he battles crime, defeats his nemesis, at least up to a point, and overcomes. It's a pure superhero story. It's one for the 80s where most of his power is firepower, but so what? If you like movies from the 80s, God, if you've seen any Rambo movie, you're fine with that kind of thing. But it is a real superhero movie. The special effects still hold up. The action is excellent, and it has all these other layers, these layers of satire about, where culture was in the 80s, looking forward to where a lot of things wound up now. So you can watch it now and just marvel in how prescient it was. So it's a great action story. If you even remotely like superhero stories, it maps onto that. And there's just, God, I could talk about RoboCop for a while.
Rob, I think that you missed your calling. What you should have been in life is somebody who categorized movies into genres, because you're constantly saying, you're like, you know what, this is classified as this, but you know what, actually it's this. Whatever job that is, somebody please hire Rob to put your movie into the right category, the correct category, because you guys are doing a bad job.
I mean, the bidding war between local blockbusters in the 90s to get me in there to organize their VHS tapes was brutal, but my time has passed.
I do feel that this is something that you would be very good at, being like, all right, here, Rob, here's a movie, here's the pitch. Where does this belong? Well, you think it's sci-fi, but it's actually, I'm just saying, this is a passion that you have. It needs to be marketable. We need to market it.
I wish it were. I mean, thank God I learned to code. Let's just put it that way.
Rob's employed. Don't worry about Rob.
Yeah, I'll be fine.
You'll be fine.
As long as they don't breathalyzer me before my desk, I'm fine.
He works from home. It's okay. Okay, so RoboCop, see RoboCop. I had never heard of this movie. God, even a year ago. This was my first Verhoeven, and kind of set the path. It's a little bit downhill from there, even though he has solid movies. But RoboCop is a special gem. Feels of its time. I'm sure it would have probably felt more revelatory to you when it came out, but it still holds up.
Yeah, definitely. You can smell the 80s coming off.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't mind that. I was young, and
yeah,
I was young in the 80s. I like remembering that.
Yeah.
But it still holds up because of that. And because it feels 80s, seeing the parts that map to, oh yeah, things kind of turned out that way, give it a little extra juice. So it's 80s in that good way.
Yeah, that's on Amazon to rent. That's where I saw it, but I'm sure there are other means. Okay, now number one, so excited. I haven't talked to Rob about this yet. Unbreakable from the year 2000. M. Night Shyamalan, when he was good, great. Let's say great. I'll be gracious because I know he's a really nice guy and he's still making movies. So this is, I would say, probably the peak of his mastery. And arguably, is this your favorite superhero film? Have I caught you on the right day, Rob?
I've said to people over the years, on the right day, this is the best superhero film ever made. So we'll go with that for today.
Yes, I was hoping today was the day.
But yeah, above Marvel movies, above DC movies, I've got a special love for this one for a lot of reasons.
Well, and this is not based on an actual comic, right? But is it close to anything? Like, what would you?
That's what's cool. It is not based on any pre-existing property, and it's really not close to anything I read before. I mean,
so it felt new.
it was really very unique. I mean, the concept of somebody born with superpowers, is as close as you can get. So like Marvel's mutants, maybe, but even that doesn't apply to this. It was the concept of this guy has superpowers and never knew it. I'd never seen before. So as an origin story, to try to even to watch David Dunn try to come to terms with I might have superpowers through the very simple, have you ever been sick? I don't think I've ever seen that in a comic book before. That was a really cool, interesting question of, well, if you're Superman, you probably don't get sick. Okay, have you ever been injured? And his memory of injuries and whether they actually happen, and him trying to remember. I mean, with COVID, I've been sick in 3 years, but if you ask me the last time I had a cold, I know I've had them, but I couldn't tell you when.
Right.
So it's just the way they constructed his learning it, and the simple stuff of, all right, can I just keep adding weight to this bar and I can keep lifting it? And it never gets easy, but I can keep doing it.
And like you said in your review of it, your original review of it, it was like you wouldn't know that you could do these things because who's going to go and get shot at just to see? You're not going to test yourself in the ways of a superhero because that'd be crazy. It wouldn't even occur to you like, can I leap from buildings? Well, I don't know. Maybe you can, but like, why would you go?
Yeah, it's the risk reward on that is a little dicey to give it a shot.
Right. So maybe you can do these extraordinary things, but no one is going to test those things in real life. But who's to say you don't have like?
And that was really intriguing, and I'd never seen that in another superhero story. And the way Shyamalan opened it, he's indestructible. He's the only survivor of a train crash. Even if that was you, would you start thinking, well, let's see if I'm really into... No, I'm a lucky son of a bitch. And you could go the rest of your life and have no idea. So the way it was constructed with Elijah, with Mr. Glass, kind of leading him down the path to try different things and face different things, along with the motivations, even if you were indestructible, what would make you, even for a day, go out and say, I'm going to find me a criminal and fight me some crime?
Right.
Well, it's his family's falling apart. He's desperate to maintain a relationship with his son, who clearly hero worships him, and the breakdown of the family. He's witnessing his son falling apart because of it, and he doesn't have any control of it. And his wife is making him go out on first dates after 12 years. It's like, oh, really? All right, let's go do that. We'll have a date, and we'll pretend we don't know each other's favorite color. Fine. But it's like, okay, to save my son and save that relationship, now that I've come to terms with it, all right, let me go try this. And even then, all right, I'm going to fight crime. So he's got the ability to know when somebody touches him, their darkest secrets. He sees some dark shit.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got to let a lot of it go because he's just a dude who's got to go to work tomorrow.
And doesn't know how to fight. Like he hasn't been trained in...
That is the best moment. I was going to get to that, but if you want to take a run at it.
I'm going to let you say it, but I'm just going through. And also that he doesn't even, like, he has to go to his wife to say, have I ever been sick? I mean, it's like the unraveling of the whole thing of him being, and it's like, well, I mean, do you remember? Like, the way that this unfolds is just masterful. But then also, yes, like, why would a person do this? Well, because they want their son back. It is set up literally as a drama, which I really like. This could have, if he had taken out Elijah's character, Samuel L. Jackson's character, it could have been a straight drama, quite frankly. And so that's one of the most unique parts of this to me, is to put it in a drama, hardcore, and then say, yeah.
And it absolutely maps, even without the superpowers. A guy who chose to give up a football career because he was in love and the relationship falling apart. And yeah, he has to come to terms with, I've given this up for this that's falling apart and I want to save it. But there's a certain amount of resentment
Resentment.
there on either side. It works great as a non superhero story in and of itself.
And
And
he's
that's,
also going through life kind of with this feeling of like something's wrong, should like I'm not doing what I should be doing. There's this malaise that's a very existential as well underneath it, where he's just like, he tells her that he had a nightmare once, and that's when he checked out. But it really is that he has a calling, if you want to call it that. There's something that he's supposed to be doing, and he's not doing it, and so he doesn't feel right with himself.
and even I never thought of this until you brought it up. So that's why doing this is fun. The way it's structured, he could easily it's because he has a calling within the greater story, but you take the superhero piece out, he could be thinking as simple as, I was a football star.
Exactly.
I could be doing so much more than this. I'm a security guard at a
Exactly.
stadium.
And there are
So
movies that are just that. There are tons of movies that are just about like, what are you meant to do in your life and why aren't you doing it? So that just starting at the baseline of that, but then you add, what if you were born with powers? We don't care how you got them. Who cares?
yeah, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. You just have them. You weren't bitten. Your brain wasn't sliced open. You weren't taken apart by maniacs, and you don't have a rocket strapped to you. You just have them. Okay. You don't use them because you didn't know that you had them. And then, but they were part of the football stuff. I'm sure benefited from his super strength and all of that stuff. He just thought that he was good at it.
Yeah.
But yeah, you could take this in a non superhero movie thing, and it would still be just as compelling of a movie.
Yeah, it's all you have to do is change the ending from, I went out and used my powers to stop a serial killer, to, fine, I played football with the kid who's going to be the starting
Quarterback.
And my son respected me because of it, and I felt like, you know what, I didn't lose my youth, and it works just as well.
Or now I'm going to be a coach, or now I'm going to go back to football, and maybe Robin Wright Penn is okay with it but she has a problem with violence. But anyways, the point is, there could have been a way to kind of salvage this whole thing of like a dream that you gave up on, that's still eating away at you. But since we're adding these elements of like, okay, now getting back to your flip side thing, now we have Mr. Glass, who is very breakable, right? He's on the other end of he Bruce Willis can't break a bone. He breaks, so you have this parallel, which is great for the foil.
That same classic. Yep, the villain is the opposite of the hero, and Shyamalan throughout the movie shots through mirrors, of mirrors, reflections. It's right there from the beginning. He's got the reputation for twists, and this obviously has a twist ending. Plays fair with it. His mother early on says there's a twist ending. But yeah,
right.
the visual motifs of reflections, and it is all over the movie. Same thing with the colors, the purple all around anything remotely evil, and God knows Mr. Glass is constantly wearing purple. That's a classic green and purple. That's the Joker, that's Lex Luthor, that's all over comic books. Where David is more of a blue, and that's obviously Superman is his big color.
Well, and what do you think about the water stuff too? Because that's a big part of this. Is I don't know if that is necessarily expressed as kryptonite, but it could be that because there's a lot of rain. There's a lot of, obviously there's the thing about what happened to him as a kid that I thought was going to end up being how he got whatever, but that's not. But that's an interesting thing to add to this too. That makes it more like a comic book as opposed to just straight drama.
It's yeah, and at one point in the phone message to David, Glass does say, "Water's your kryptonite," so he does make that direct comparison.
Right.
It's it's one of those things. It's actually it's pretty ingenious because the other cool thing is he doesn't necessarily have superpowers. You could look at this and say, no, it just turns out he was stronger than he thought he was. He's lucky he didn't get bad hit in that last fight with the man in orange. So yeah, it could all be in his imagination. Of course he might drown. So by making it something mundane that can hurt him, it does give that number one, you can look at it and say, no, not a superhero story at all. Or it can be a classic superhero weakness. It's really a great conceit because it lets you have it both ways.
And he doesn't really test it out. You're kind of working off of hearsay here, not hearsay, but like what happened to him as a kid. You're kind of going off that, and then he doesn't really do anything with that except for that it's just kind of looming. Like it's always there as a threat. But I just like how M. Night's not really interested in answering all our questions or sort of satisfying curiosities to their end.
Yeah, because it ultimately it doesn't matter. You hit it on the head earlier. It does not matter how he got his powers. The origin story with the how. I mean, that's I think I wrote this on Letterboxd. That's for kids who want to be able to tell the story to themselves later on and maybe imagine that they'll be big and strong enough to tell mom, no, it's not my bedtime.
Right.
But what matters is what he does with them. So yeah, by taking out here's how it all works, it lets it be, it could just be he's been convinced about this, or he could really have superpowers, but it lets him focus on what matters, which is what do you do if maybe you got him?
And why? What?
Yeah.
It's way more about your intrinsic motivation to act, because, like you said, where he can have that feeling about people's darkest secrets. Okay, so if you could do that, what would you do? Because in Super, he's just waiting by the dumpster, hoping that a sketchy-looking person walks by, but he doesn't actually know. He has to go off of it's kind of like Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes doesn't have superpowers, but he has deductive reasoning to such an extent that he can kind of, but with David Dunn in Unbreakable, he does have whatever you want to call the ability, maybe not supernatural, but he does have something that's stronger than deductive reasoning and stronger than waiting around for a suspicious looking character.
Yeah. But he still needs to have the motivation to do something with it. But even, again, I look at all this on this list with superhero comics, the hero who's awkward with women, that's a trope that goes back to Clark Kent. Clark Kent, Peter Parker, David Dunn, the name is perfect to fit into the genre. So he gets all I'm making a real human drama and I'm showing rather than telling as much as possible, but he still gets all the superhero shit right. It's magnificent.
It really is. And also, I mean, Rob, just from even if you take this from a technical standpoint, the direction and just the creativity with the shots, like when he first is in that man's house and the camera's behind the curtain and it's raining and it's literally you're watching the film through the slits in the curtain, and the beginning scene in the train, the camera is down and you're watching them talk between the chairs. There's so many shots where you're like, I've never seen this before. I've never seen anybody do this before, which is difficult to do.
Except you have, in a comic book, it's the place between the panels. It's the bleed.
You're quoting Super at me. I know you're not meaning to. It's the place between the panels.
But no, it's literally, I mean, if you think about it, that's kind of a panel structure. You go one image to the other, to the other. I think that's what he was reproducing.
That is apt. And I bet you anything, if I rewatched it with that knowledge right now, there would be even more instances where it's through slits of, where,
now that you're bringing it up, shit, I watched it this morning. I'm going to have to watch it again later.
Golly. Well,
pick up on more of that.
I think there's even when they're in the stadium, there's just a lot of shots where they're either far away, the camera's far away, or there's something obscuring the main focus of the image.
Yeah.
So, and there's just cool stuff like when Elijah turns, when his mom gives him the first comic book and he turns it around and the camera moves
Yeah. And
with
it
him.
moves to maintain the opposite side from the hero, the opposite view from the hero, which is awesome.
Okay. So just to recap, this is Rob's top 5. We want you to watch this list. Number 5 is The Rocketeer.
Yes.
4 is The Fly. 3 is Super. 2 is RoboCop. 1 is Unbreakable. I believe Unbreakable was on HBO Max when I just watched it. It might not be though forever, but that's a really good movie as well as kind of fitting into the theme of this episode.
Yeah, it was just re-released on 4K, so it's been remastered, so it's easily available on physical media.
Yeah, and it's gorgeous. If you want to remember that M. Night Shyamalan did not make The Last Airbender and The Happening and the recent Old, come with us to a time.
What's an After Earth? I have no idea what you're talking about.
I don't know what you're talking about, Rob. We are down to Rob's popcorn questions, which are inspired by James Lipton's Inside the Actors Studio.
I thought I told you I'm not answering any goddamn questions without my lawyer here. No.
I'm glad that Rob quoted his own bio line himself because that's great. That always makes me think that line's from War Games. But is it an actual movie quote?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
It
feels like it should be an actual quote. I mean, it's got to be somehow. But
it's possible. I got it from someplace. It just always, you go on one of these sites, say a little something about yourself. No, fuck you.
No, I'm not doing anything without my lawyer present.
Exactly. But
wise
for
advice.
you, Amy, I'll answer some questions.
Okay, here we go. 5 questions. 5 questions for Rob. Number 1, what do you think is the most underrated movie?
This one I thought a lot about, and at least for me, and I have reasons for it, is even though it's much maligned, partially for good reason, Johnny Mnemonic, with Keanu Reeves.
Wow. Johnny Mnemonic.
It gets a lot of crap for closing with an intelligent dolphin and with Ice-T talking about hacking the brain. It is kind of goofy. It is certainly no Matrix, but it's I saw it at the right time. I saw it when it came out, and it was the first real cyberpunk science fiction I'd ever seen or read. I hadn't read any William Gibson or anything like that. And as a primer for somebody who's never seen any cyberpunk, I mean, I suppose you can count Blade Runner, but real Gibson-esque cyberpunk, near future, high-tech lowlives, it's a great primer for it. Keanu Reeves, this is sort of his in-between period between, the dumb guy in Bill and Ted and action hero that he eventually became. So he's a little bit goofy, but he's believable as a guy in over his head in this situation where normally I'm just a guy who delivers messages and now everybody's after me and I have this thing in my head killing me. Does it have weaknesses? You're goddamn right it does. But there's still enough fun there, particularly if you're willing to say, all right, you know what, this is going to go, if not off the rails, it's going up on one set of wheels for a while. As long as you can buy into that, it's a good time. But yeah, eventually you get to the mind-reading dolphin. You really got to grit your teeth through that part.
It's directed by Robert Longo, who I've never heard of, but the screenplay is William Gibson, based on his novel. So that's always a good sign when the original creator writes a screenplay, and then it looks like Dina Meyer.
Dina Meyer, thank you. Yes,
I knew you were gonna.
But yeah, it's the other. It wasn't a novel. It was a short story. So it's one of those. Story. So it's like those early Stephen King movies. How do we turn 15 pages into an hour and a half?
Like Shawshank.
Similar. Yeah. Similar thing here, except Shawshank is undeniably good. Yeah. This, if you're partial to the genre, particularly if it was, that was my way into it.
This is like
I still have a lot of fun with it.
this is like Rob's begrudging sell. You're like, it's like, what is your most underrated movie, Rob? And you're like, I don't know if you want to see this, but that's my opener. That's my lead in. You know, you're like, it's like someone's like, you're painfully trying to get this out and very cautiously letting us know that this is something we need to see.
I mean, my second choice was another cyberpunk that nobody's heard of, Hotel Artemis.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that with Jodie
But
Foster.
yeah, and Dave Bautista, and
Uh-huh.
another fun one, but it's not going to be for everybody because it's got some goofy as hell moments in it. But
Okay, Johnny Mnemonic. I'm going to add that to my watch list. Thank you for that. It's exciting. Keanu, young Keanu.
Thank me now. We'll see if you continue to thank me. But
okay, 2. What is your happiest movie experience?
it was when I saw the first Tim Burton Batman movie for the first time, because that came out just as I finished high school. So I had spent an adolescence of, oh, you're a nerd, you read comic books. And suddenly, over the course of a few months, everybody loved Batman. And, you know, the Batman on screen I grew up with was Adam West with Bat Shark Repellent. And trust me, that did not help me not get made fun of on the playground when I brought Batman comic books. So, you know, something serious. We look forward to it all year long. And we found out it was supposed to come out June 23rd, Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Found out Thursday they were doing a sneak preview at 9:00.
Oh my
So
gosh.
had to rejigger to get out of my summer day job, meet my buddy Keith. We knew it was going to be a mess. We got there 2 hours early to stand in line, and in retrospect, the whole thing was a mess. The projectionist was in no way ready to spin this up, but we got in, we got front row, we got our popcorn, and they were still trying to get it set up, so it started at like 9:15. The first trailer was Young Einstein Picture Quit. No movie for an hour. They finally got it spot. I didn't get home until 1:00 in the morning, but I had looked forward for this for so long, and to be able to see it a day earlier than I thought I could with my best friend from high school, it it wound up being an experience I was not expecting, but really cool. It was the first time of 7 times I saw it that summer.
Oh,
Do I still love the Tim Burton Batman? I do. Do I still think it holds up the same way? No, there have been better Batman movies since then. But, you know, at that time, at that age, it was the perfect Batman movie. Enough of 80s action movie to capture the public's imagination, serious enough so that people could understand at least a little bit why I loved it.
And it allowed you to talk about it too. Like you could actually talk about it where other people would want to talk about it. Like it's not just like your passion for something that nobody cares about. It's topical. So it made it topical.
Yep. It's amazing how that happened from like April to July or to June that year, because that was my senior year. We went on a band trip to New York City, and in Times Square they had just the giant golden bat logo up, and 2/3 of the class are, what are those, vampire teeth? And I'm like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. That's a bat.
Rob, you can't win. But
by the end of June I'd won.
Yeah.
By the end of June I'd won.
That night, Rob.
Yep.
Okay, so number 3, that's a great story. I love that story. Number 3, a movie you changed your opinion on.
This one I'm going to cheat on a little bit because I changed my opinion on it the first time I saw it, and it's Blade Runner 2049.
Oh.
I wanted nothing to do with Blade Runner 2049 after they announced it. I knew Denis. I knew who the director was. I'd seen Prisoners. Yeah, I'd seen Prisoners, so it's like, he's a good director.
Mm-hmm.
I'd seen Arrival, so I knew he could do science fiction. But in my mind, Blade Runner, the story was over. The ambiguity of did they get away or not, particularly after they came out with the Ridley Scott director's cut where they got rid of the happy ending and the narration. Perfect moment. They're on the run. Leave it. I literally, like, I'm not going. And my significant other said, I really want to see it. You can't make me go alone. So we're going to go see it. And I all had to drag me kicking and screaming. And it's like, we're going directly to the bar afterwards.
No question.
And I was knocked flat. It was, regardless of the original Blade Runner, a solid movie on its own. It maintained enough of the ambiguity of who was a replicant, who was not, maintain the what does it mean to be human free will question with these new characters and great visuals and the whole question of is he the chosen one or not, who really was
Yeah.
the actual replicant child. I was blown away by it, but it was one of those, and I think comic fandom, sci-fi fandom, Star Wars fandom, there really is a tendency to be like, no, that's other, I don't want that. And a lesson I really took from that was you got to give things a try. You really have to withhold judgment. And I really try to do that. And I fall flat sometimes. But to me, that was really, it taught me something, being so fucking wrong and going into something that's like, that was really good.
Next one. Oh, my favorite question. An actor you find undeniably sexy, though I think I know.
Look, we talked about The Rocketeer. Jennifer Connelly, Rocketeer, 1991. My God, was there anybody more perfectly built, perfect face? It seemed like, we were talking about it before the show, the girl next door. So beautiful, but seemed like, you could actually
Exotic?
talk to. Yeah, but in a way, she seemed like you'd actually talk to her.
Right.
Which you don't get with a lot of, the perfect Hollywood starlet. She's absolutely perfect, but seemed approachable. I know full well she'd hose me down with pepper spray. I wouldn't try to talk to her, but at least you got the feeling of it. So that's where I go.
I think she has a perfect blend of, she's so gorgeous that it'd be like disarming, but then she also maintains that girl next door quality, which is insane. I don't know anyone else who could do that, where they're incredibly alluring and like, who are you? Where did you come from? No one's this beautiful. But then also you feel like, yeah, you could have a chat with her, and that she'd date somebody like Cliff. I mean, it's like, perfect package, really. I don't know why.
Yep.
I'm asking you this question, dang it. I'm not here to talk about myself. But yes, I told Rob prior that if he is J-Con stan, he should watch The Hot Spot by Dennis Hopper. So that better be your next movie, Rob. I don't want to see you logging anything else.
I'll try and track it down this week.
Thank you very much. It's the least you can do.
Oh no, I could do less, but I'll try to do it for you, Amy.
Thank you. Okay, number one, our last question. If you were to die and come back as a movie character, who would you choose?
Mr. Blutarsky, 0.0. Bluto is aspirational, man. 7 years of college, parties like an animal, doesn't go to a single class, all the interpersonal drama going on within the frat or the other frats, never a part of it, only there for the good times. And when it's all said and done, he gets the most beautiful girl on campus and becomes a senator.
I should have known you were going to go in this direction. I don't know why I didn't.
If there's a character who looks like he had more fun in life.
The only thing I was going to say, like, to parallel that would be like Ferris Bueller, but he still kind of gets into, he's not like having a blast the entire time. But
oh yeah, he still gets up in Cameron's drama. That's part of the whole thing. Is
exactly.
He does this to get involved in Cameron's drama, but at the very end, even there, yep, he gets away with everything. The unspoken part of that is Cameron's father kicked the shit out of him when he got home, man. I guarantee it. I'm sure he felt empowered. I'm going to stand up to the old man. It's harder than you think, my friend.
This is why there's no sequel.
Yep.
Yeah. So you picked somebody who it's all out good times.
Good times, and when the hammer fell and he just got in the car and was gone and faced no repercussions. I can't think of a movie character who looked like he had a better time from the minute we met him until we heard where he wound up.
You understood the assignment, Rob. You understood the assignment.
Because
the whole thing is like, well, what movie would you want to be stuck in? Because it's not just a character; it's also just like the yeah. So I think this is fitting for everything that has come before.
It's the one movie we've talked about that doesn't fit in at all with the rest of them, however.
Exactly. You broke the chain because Blade Runner was bringing it back, and then we got to end on a note that doesn't have anything to do with anything. I love it. So, with that, check out Rob's list. Please check him out on Letterboxd. He's one of my personal favorites, and funny as hell, and just see somebody who seems to be having a blast. That's you, Rob, on Letterboxd.
I have fun there, and this has been great. I've had a great time, so thank you very much for inviting me. I really appreciate it. I've enjoyed this.
It's been a pleasure, and we will see you at the movies.